James was a quiet man. He worked hard every day at a small store in the city. He was honest and kind. After a long day at work, James was walking home. The sun was setting and the streets were getting darker. He liked this time of day because the city felt calm. As James walked, he thought about his family. His little daughter was waiting for him at home. He wanted to see her smile and hear her laugh. He smiled softly to himself and walked faster. The day had been tough, but he was happy to be going home. Suddenly, James heard a voice shout behind him, "Hey, stop right there!" James turned around quickly. Two police officers were running toward him. They looked serious. James stopped and raised his hands a little to show he was not a threat. "Why are you stopping me?" James asked politely. The officers did not answer his question. Instead, one of them said, "You look suspicious. We need to check you." James was surprised. He had done nothing wrong. He had not even spoken to anyone. He was just walking home like every day. "Suspicious? What do you mean?" "I'm just going home," James said, trying to stay calm. But the officers did not listen. One officer started to search James's pockets. James felt scared. His heart beat faster. He looked around. Some people on the street were watching. Some stopped walking. But no one came to help him. James asked again, "Please tell me why you are doing this." "What did I do?" One officer looked at him coldly and said, "Just stay quiet and cooperate." James felt a cold sweat on his forehead. He did not understand what was happening. He was afraid. The officers talked quietly between themselves but never explained why they arrested him. James looked into the eyes of the officer who was searching him. He saw no kindness, only suspicion. The officers handcuffed James's hands behind his back. James felt the cold metal tight around his wrists. It hurt a little, but more than that, it made him feel like a criminal. "No, please, I didn't do anything," James shouted, but the officers ignored his words. James looked around again. The people watching were silent. No one was helping. James felt very alone. He wished someone would stand up for him. But the street was quiet except for the sound of the police car. The officers pushed James toward their car. James felt cold fear inside him. He was still confused. Why was this happening to him? He had never been in trouble with the law. He was a good man. As they put him in the back seat of the police car, James looked out the window. The city was dark now. The streetlights cast long shadows. James saw a few people standing on the sidewalk watching. Their faces were serious, but no one came close. James's mind raced. He thought about his family. How would his daughter feel if she knew her father was in trouble? Would his wife know? Would someone come to help him? The police car started moving slowly. James sat quietly, still handcuffed. He wanted to speak, to explain, but the officers said nothing to him. They did not answer his questions. The silence was heavy and scary. James tried to stay calm. He took deep breaths. He told himself to be strong. But inside, he was afraid. He did not know what was going to happen next. As the car drove further from the street where James was arrested, his mind stayed busy. He remembered the moment the police stopped him. It felt like a bad dream. He kept asking himself, "Why me? What did I do?" The officers still did not say a word. James looked at their faces. They looked serious but not angry. It was like they were doing a job, but a job that did not make sense to James. The police car stopped at a station. James saw the building through the window. It looked cold and gray. James's heart sank. He thought about the long night ahead. He hoped someone would listen to his story. He hoped he would be free soon. The door of the car opened, and the officers helped James out. James felt the handcuffs loosen a little, but he was still not free. The officers led him inside. The room was small and empty. James sat down on a hard bench. He looked around. There were cameras on the walls and a desk with papers. A few officers walked by, but none spoke to James. He felt like he was invisible. James wanted to call his family, but he was not allowed. The officers told him to wait. Wait for what? James did not know. Time moved slowly. James thought about all the things he wanted to say. He wanted to tell the truth. He wanted to say he was innocent. But no one was listening. Outside the small room, the city moved on. People were going home, having dinner, talking with friends. But James was stuck. He was caught in a moment he could not understand. The first part of his nightmare had only just begun. James sat quietly, wondering what would happen next. Would he be free? Would someone help him? Or was he going to be trapped by a mistake he did not make? The silence was broken only by the footsteps of the officers. James looked up, ready for whatever would come. The story of James's fight for justice was about to begin. James sat alone in the small, cold room. The walls were white and bare. There was only a hard bench to sit on. The room felt empty and quiet, but James's heart was full of noise. He felt scared and confused. He kept asking himself, "Why am I here? What did I do wrong?" The police officers came and went. They asked questions but did not listen to James's answers. They wrote things down quickly, like they already decided what to believe. James tried to explain calmly, "I was walking home. I did nothing wrong. Please check the cameras. You will see I am telling the truth." But the officers just nodded and moved on. No one looked at James like they cared. He felt invisible and trapped. Time passed slowly. James looked out the small window, but it was dark outside. The only light came from a flickering bulb in the ceiling. James's thoughts went to his family. He missed his wife and daughter. He wished he could call them, tell them he was okay. He pulled out his phone, but an officer took it away. "No calls," the officer said. James's heart sank. He was alone with no way to reach the people he loved. The minutes turned into hours. James tried to stay strong. He breathed deeply and remembered the advice his brother Michael once gave him. Stay calm. Speak the truth. Don't lose hope. James wanted to believe Michael would help him. But in this cold room, hope felt very far away. Suddenly, the door opened. An officer walked in with a phone. "You can make one call," he said. James's hands shook as he took the phone. He dialed his brother Michael's number. The phone rang, and James waited, his heart pounding. When Michael answered, James whispered, "Michael, it's me. I've been arrested, but I didn't do anything. Please, help me." Michael's voice was calm but strong. "Don't worry, James. I'm going to fix this. I promise." James felt a small spark of hope. Maybe things would be okay after all. The call ended, but James's fight was only beginning. He sat back on the bench waiting to see what would happen next. Michael was in his office when his phone rang. It was James. Hearing his brother's voice full of fear made Michael's heart beat fast. "James, what happened?" Michael asked quickly. "I don't know. The police stopped me on the street and arrested me. They say I look suspicious. I didn't do anything, Michael. Please help me," James said, voice shaking. Michael stayed calm. He was the U.S. Attorney General, one of the most powerful people in the country. He had the power to help his brother, but first he needed to act fast. Michael picked up his phone again and called the police station where James was held. His voice was strong and serious. "This is Michael Williams, U.S. Attorney General. Why is my brother James being held without cause? I want a full explanation immediately," Michael demanded. The officers on the other side were nervous. They knew who Michael was. They started checking their files, but there was no real evidence against James. Michael didn't stop there. He called the police chief and arranged to visit the station himself. He said, "I want to see my brother and review all the facts. This wrongful arrest must end now." At the police station, the officers whispered about the powerful man coming. They were worried. Meanwhile, James sat in his small room waiting. He did not know what Michael was doing, but he hoped his brother was helping. Every minute felt like a year. Michael arrived at the station. His presence filled the room. He spoke with calm authority, asking questions and demanding answers. The police officers tried to explain, but there was no proof against James. "Michael," said firmly, "you must release him immediately. This man has done nothing wrong." James, watching through a glass window, felt a rush of hope. His brother was fighting for him. The tension in the room grew. The police officers knew they had made a mistake. Michael was not going to let this go. This was just the beginning. The fight for justice was on. The police officers talked quietly among themselves. Michael's words were clear and firm. They knew they had no real reason to keep James. Finally, the chief nodded. "Release him now," he said. James's heart jumped. He heard footsteps coming toward the small room. The door opened and one officer came in. "James, you are free to go," the officer said. James stood up slowly, still feeling weak. The handcuffs were removed. He rubbed his wrists, amazed to be free. Michael was waiting outside. When James saw his brother, he ran to him. They hugged tightly. James felt safe for the first time in hours. Michael said quietly, "I told you I would help." But the story was not over yet. Michael looked serious. "We need to find out why this happened and make sure it never happens again." James nodded. "I want justice. No one should be treated like this." Together they walked out of the station. The city was dark and quiet, but James felt hope shining inside him. The night had been long and hard, but with Michael by his side, James was ready to face whatever came next. After his release, James returned home. His wife, Maria, opened the door and cried when she saw him. Their little daughter, Mia, ran to hug him tightly. For a moment, James forgot everything, the fear, the handcuffs, the cold police station. He felt safe with his family again. But deep inside, James knew the pain was not over. Being arrested without cause left a mark on his heart. He couldn't forget how the officers treated him like a criminal when he was innocent. He wanted answers. He wanted the truth to come out. Michael stayed close to James. The next day, Michael used his power to start an investigation. He met with police leaders and city officials. Michael said, "This kind of wrongful arrest is wrong. We must find out why this happened and stop it from happening to others." The investigation showed that some officers had acted unfairly. They had stopped James because of his skin color. This was not just a mistake, it was discrimination. Michael felt anger and sadness. He knew many people faced this kind of unfair treatment every day. Michael made a public statement. On TV and news, he said, "No one should be arrested without a good reason. We must respect all people equally, no matter their color or background." James watched the news with his family. He felt proud of his brother but also nervous. Speaking out meant some people would not like him, but James was ready. He wanted to help others who might face the same problem. Then James received a call from the police chief. The chief apologized for the mistake and promised changes. "We will train our officers better. We want to rebuild trust with the community," the chief said. James decided to meet with young people in the city. He shared his story and told them to stay strong and speak up if they face unfair treatment. Many listened carefully and thanked him for his courage. Days turned into weeks. The city started to change slowly. Police officers joined training sessions about fairness and respect. James and Michael worked together with community leaders to make sure justice was fair for everyone. One evening, James sat with his daughter Mia, telling her stories about kindness and bravery. He looked out the window, feeling hope for the future. He knew the fight was not over, but with his family and brother by his side, he believed things could get better. James took a deep breath. He had faced fear and pain, but he also found strength and hope. His journey was difficult, but it was just the beginning of a bigger fight for justice. Days passed, and the city was slowly waking up to the change Michael and James were working to bring. James still felt the weight of what had happened, but now he carried it with strength, not fear. Michael continued to use his power and influence. He held meetings with leaders from different parts of the city, police, schools, community groups. He said, "We must build trust. Justice must be fair for everyone, no matter who they are. We cannot let this happen again." James joined these meetings too. He shared his story, not just as a victim, but as a man who wanted to change the system. People listened. They saw the pain in his eyes, but also the hope in his heart. At home, Maria and Mia stood by James's side every day. Mia, just a little girl, didn't understand everything. But she knew her father was brave, and that made her proud. She held his hand tightly when he spoke at community events, showing that even the smallest voices matter. One afternoon, James received a letter from the mayor. It thanked him for his courage and promised support for new laws to protect people from wrongful arrests. James smiled. This was a real step forward. But change takes time. Not everyone was happy. Some people ignored the truth or made jokes about what happened. James felt their eyes watching him when he walked outside. It hurt, but he didn't let it stop him. Instead, James focused on what mattered most: his family and the future. He started a group to help others who faced unfair treatment. They shared stories, helped each other, and worked together to bring justice. Michael stood beside James through it all. One night they talked late into the evening. "James," Michael said, "your courage is changing lives. You showed the world what strength looks like. This fight is bigger than us now." James looked at his brother and nodded. "I want every person to feel safe and respected. No one should fear being treated unfairly." The next morning, James walked outside with his family. The sun was bright. The city buzzed with life. He knew there were still battles to fight, but he also saw hope shining in every face around him. This was more than a story about a wrongful arrest. It was a story about love, courage, and standing up for what is right. James took a deep breath and smiled. A new chapter had begun. The days after the investigation brought more changes than James had expected. Police officers who acted unfairly faced consequences. Some were suspended, and others had to take special training. The city's leaders worked hard to rebuild trust between the police and the community. James and Michael did not stop. They knew one case could not fix years of hurt, but this case could start a new path, a path toward fairness and respect for all. James continued sharing his story everywhere he could, on TV shows, in schools, and at community meetings. His voice became stronger. People began to listen. One afternoon, James met with young people at a community center. Many had stories like his, stories of fear, pain, and hope. James told them, "You are not alone. Together we can change the world." Maria and Mia were there, smiling proudly. Mia hugged her father tightly after he finished speaking. James looked at his daughter and thought about the future he wanted for her. A future where she would never be judged by the color of her skin. Michael, too, was proud. He had used his position not just for his brother but for everyone. He reminded the city that justice must be blind and fair. But the journey was not easy. Some people still held on to old beliefs. James knew the fight for equality would take time. Still, every small step forward was a victory. One evening, James sat with Michael and Maria on the porch of their home. The sun set behind the city skyline, painting the sky with colors of hope. "We started something important," Michael said softly. "This is just the beginning." James nodded. "Yes. But now we know change is possible. We have to keep pushing. For ourselves, for our families, and for the next generation." The city was not perfect, but it was growing. And with people like James and Michael standing strong, it would grow into a place where justice and hope lived together. James smiled, feeling peace inside. He had faced fear, pain, and injustice, but he had also found courage, love, and strength. This was his story, A story of a man wrongfully arrested, a brother who fought for him, and a family that never gave up. And it was a story that would inspire many more.